Now, our story can be likened to an encyclopedia of about 30 volumes. Those of you who are bibliophiles will appreciate this. Each volume having about 450 years, and each page of the volume 1 million years. Here's our story, right? Volume 1, the Big Bang. Volume 21, the Earth. That's 20 volumes of like, what's happening here? Okay, skip down to volume 29, the Cambrian period, and then volume 30, now that's our volume. The dinosaurs go extinct on page 385. Now, I don't know about you, but I was in the University of Pittsburgh airport one time, coming down the escalator, and they had this giant skeleton of a brontosaurus. And I'm like, oh my God, that's a distant relative. We don't look anything alike, but mammals appear on page 390. Volume 30, page 450, the last line, and the last two words of the last line are human beings. That would be us. But I want you to note, there's no period. Oh, end of story. Thank you for reading this book. Please look at the back cover for how it's being, It is rather that we're in evolution. And we can't get our heads around this for anything, quite honestly. When I went to the Smithsonian a few years ago in D.C., fabulous exhibit on human origins that took up rooms, that went through, back through Afarensis, Neanderthalis, Nefeldus, all the various hominid and hominid species that have given rise to Homo sapiens sapiens, the wise ones, that would be us. Not so wise. Due to what? Greater brain complexity, greater brain size, due to what? Changes in the environment. Actually, climate change is one of the key factors of evolution. And so there's a constant adaptation of nature that finds new ways and develops new structures to, in a sense, ensure life into the next phase. Things die out, lots of death in evolution, but life itself does not die out. This is our story. We are unfinished. If there's no other better good news if there's such a term, this is it. We're unfinished. We should be yay, but we act as if we're finished and we're fixed and we're dying. And I'm saying, yeah, we're dying, but we're not finished. We're being created as we create. What happens in a fixed mentality, we lose our capacity for creativity because our energies are thinned out because we're so worried about annihilating ourselves. Life emerges toward newness. That is the story of evolution itself. It's the story of the whole universe. Why are we here after 13.8 billion years? Seriously, we should have extinguished ourselves billions of years ago. There is an irreversibility of time. This arrow of time moves in the direction of greater complexity and greater consciousness. And therefore, if we were to look at the overall scheme here, life evolves by creative power. And where I see that creative power most today is not in religion, it's in technology. I remember, when the first cell phone came out. I don't know if you remember that in the 70s, because I grew up in New Jersey with a phone on the wall that had like a 3-foot cord, so you can only step out to here. And someone said, they're going to make a phone you can carry in your hands. I was like, what? That seems crazy, right? And then AT&T came out with this foot-long thing that weighed a ton. And then in the 80s, they said, they're going to put a computer in the phone that you could connect around the world. And I said, that's out. What? What's a computer, first of all, So first of all, the rate of development here since the mid-50s is mind-boggling. It's astounding, and it's breathless. We simply can't even get our heads wrapped around it. It's our fastest evolver is technology. And so I want to come back to technology later on because we are moving towards a whole new type of existence in and through technology. It is not just something that helps me, amplify my voice. It's not just a tool. technology is something telling us about nature and nature's capacity to be recreated into something new. Of course, now we do have a problem that a lot of this stuff is did I tell you that the rate of evolution is different, right, so, here we are. So we are, as Teilhard said, we are evolution. We are evolution, now conscious of itself. We are the thinking universe. That's what we are by nature. Now, whether we're that, in our everyday lives, that's a different story. But we hold a frontier position. We're no longer the center of this cosmos, but we are, in a sense, the arrow. We're the arrowhead. It does depend how we think and how we choose. We do make a difference to the entire kit and caboodle. Now, it's not to say that the whole thing depends on us, because we can destroy ourselves. And sometimes I think the rest of nature will say, thank God, those Homo sapien people were really in our way of more life, So I want to say this. It really is, the old maxim, where your mind is, there your treasure lies, from the Gospels, right? There's something that is so absolutely true about that saying for today. Max Planck in the early 20th century said, I regard consciousness as fundamental. I regard matter as derivative from consciousness. Mind shapes matter. Matter does not shape mind. He says everything that we talk about, everything that we regard as existing, postulates consciousness. It matters where our minds are and what fills our minds and how either shrunk or expanded they are. Teilhard himself recognized in conversation with Julian Huxley and many other physicists, he says evolution is the rise of consciousness, and that's why artificial intelligence is our greatest evolver today, because it is the greatest game changer with regard to human consciousness. Now, the thing is, it has posed, this whole primacy of consciousness has posed a huge problem for science, for physics, because we can't get around consciousness. Bertrand Russell noted in the 20th century, says, we know nothing about the intrinsic quality of physical events except that they're mental events that we directly experience. In having a conscious experience, we learn something about the intrinsic nature of physical stuff, for conscious experience itself is a form of physical stuff. Consciousness itself is a form of physical stuff. Max Tegmark, the physicist at MIT, says that matter is consciousness. Now that would be really, to get our heads around that. He speaks of matter as a form of consciousness. So the trees know, the flowers know, the skies know, the clouds know all that we're up to. We can say, instead of in the beginning was the word, maybe in the beginning was consciousness. And therefore consciousness is this communication. That's what is consciousness? That's the big question, right? That's a huge question today. What is consciousness? One physicist says, well, it could be the wave side of wave-particle duality, the overlapping of, the waves, of informational fields. Consciousness does deal with informational flow. It seems to be part of the cosmos, and therefore the mind, what we call the mind, is the field of consciousness. In other words, it's how consciousness itself is being integrated and being expanded and moving forward. So I take mind certainly not as what's in my little cranium up here. Mind is the whole field that includes the body, right? The body is part of the mind. The mind-body as a field is the realm of consciousness. So what accounts for the human mind is active in the universe. Now here, you just let me know, by the way, when it's too much for you, like your brains are feeling overloaded. And we can We can take a little breather. This is a Saturday morning. I'm really well aware of that. So you just let me know. How are we doing here? Okay, I just want to make sure. I don't want to lose you to Starbucks or something, What is it that holds the whole together? That's, in a sense, the basic question here. What holds the whole together? David Bohm, again, in his notion of implicate order, had some really provocative ideas. He said the notion of reality as a whole should be such as to allow for an understanding of how reality and consciousness, or matter and consciousness, are related. So he spoke of that at each level of stuff, there's a mental pole and a physical pole. There's a, but he said even beyond this mental physical pole, there's a deeper reality, which is either beyond mind or matter itself. That idea was very influential, although Bohm is after Teilhard. Teilhard had something of the same notion. He said there's something like a principle of wholeness, what he called omega, a centrality, so to speak, that's within everything that exists. And this omega principle, it's first a principle, he says, is accompanied by a twofold energy. There's a core energy in the universe. There's a principle of a centeredness in the universe. He said this core energy has two movements. One is a movement of beyond, in a sense of transcendence. And the other movement is a sense of attraction, right? We are drawn to another, and yet we are not absorbed into the other. There's something about in that union that moves us to a new level of consciousness itself, right? Even as we sit here, we sit here not in a sense complacent in our understanding. We're constantly, in a sense, our minds are constantly being drawn beyond as we're being drawn to, right? So we're drawn beyond and we're drawn to. And again, looking at this, Teilhard spoke of these two energies as withinness and withoutness. Withinness being the energy of the beyond, the consciousness, we might say, and the withoutness being the energy of attraction, right? What keeps moving us toward, what keeps moving us beyond. And therefore, he spoke of the core energy as moving us toward and beyond as love. Isn't that what love does, right? Love, to get us out of the cultural sentimentality of love, because culture has really pulverized love into something you fall in and out of, and that breaks your heart, and you have Valentine hearts and all this kind of stuff. But love has a twofold energy. Did you ever say to yourself, what did she see in him? Right? That's a big question. What did she see, or what did he see in her? Right? Because love has a center-to-center attraction that's invisible to the naked eye. There's a core energy there. And at the same time, even in the falling in love, in the being attracted toward, as you move toward that other, your level of awareness shifts, right? Your level of consciousness now is beyond where you were in your individual self. And so Teilhard says love is the core energy of the universe itself. He says from the very beginning, there is an inner and an outer dimension to everything that exists. Every quark, every star, every particle, every atom, every leaf, every tree, everything has an inner core of awareness and an inner core of attraction. Did you ever look at a beautiful field of flowers? And there's something about their being together. In a sense, it's the beauty of their individuation in a wholeness, right? There's an awareness of, almost like the daffodils know that the incarnations are there, and I'm not going to trample on you. I'm not going to try to change your color. And yet there's a being together, an attraction toward. And so Teilhard says, love is the most powerful and still most unknown energy in the world, and that's really true. I see a lot of studies today on consciousness. I see no studies today on love, because we think we know what love is, and we haven't a clue of what we're talking about. And therefore, Teilhard himself, very, very insightful, speculative, of course, but he began to, in a sense, develop a philosophy of love. Love as the stuff of what matter is. If matter is consciousness, and matter is attractive, love, therefore, defines matter in its wholeness of being. So he spoke of love as the power of attraction that gives rise to unity. And he says, in a sense, the whole kit and caboodle is already attraction prior to existence. It's attraction, it's relationality that gives rise to being. It's not being that gives rise to relationship. So he says union is always towards more being. We are born out of a relationship of love. We exist in relationships of love, and we are oriented toward that fullness of love. So what Teilhard adds to this is, he says this is a cosmological force, a cosmological reality, not just a human reality. So love as attraction, love as unitive, love as emergence. We know when there's real love, in that union of love, something new emerges out of that union. And not just children, which is one expression, but you know that even in that union of love, there's a bond or a force as real as the persons themselves. And you can't quite name it sometimes, right? But when your partner is gone, or they die, something is deeply lost that is even more than the person of him or herself. And so what Teilhard says, that's the whole energy of the universe from the Big Bang onward. And therefore, he made this statement, the physical structure of the universe is love. The physical structure of the universe is love, and the universe itself is oriented toward more consciousness of being in love. Take that and hold that in light of our news feeds today that has us polarized, conflicted, in hatred, demise. It is our news feeds, our reality is so out of sync with the core reality of cosmic life that we have become the most unnatural species on the planet today, is the human species. The rest of the earth is doing just fine without us.